It's been over a week since the last update, guys. Just quickly want to thank those people behind the scenes that fund this channel, also the website and the research that's ongoing, mainly on the magnetic pole shift. I want to hit the ground running, so let's begin. Right, the Svalbard seed vault, most of you know about. Just want to go over a few brief details with regards to this, and then I'll tell you why I want to talk about this. We're also going to later talk about Monsanto as it's related. Monsanto, most people know, are the guys responsible for genetically modifying various seeds, mainly crop seeds, and they're international, so they're a global company, and their seeds go pretty much all around the world, and like I say, we'll talk about them. So Svalbard was put into action around 1984. Prior to this, it was a coal mine. In 2008, there was more than 187,000 seed samples. Each seed sample consists of around 500 seeds, and in 2015 there was 840,000 seed samples. So times that 840,000 by 500, you have an idea as to how many seed samples or seeds there actually are in that vault. It has a capacity to store around 4.5 million seed samples, and it can do this, some say, particular types of seeds for up to thousands of years. Think about that. Also think about the fact that this facility used to be a coal mine, and bear in mind where it is right now, I wouldn't have thought there are many trees because of its location being around about 820 miles from the exact North Pole. So, you know, it's pretty isolated where it is. The point I want to draw about the fact that it was a coal mine originally is that at some point this region of where Svalbard coal mine is, and now it is the seed vault as we know, used to have a thriving vegetation landscape. In order for there to be coal deposits there, it must have had trees, shrubs, other types of vegetation which has decayed, been crushed over the hundreds, maybe thousands of years, and is now turned into the coal. And I've theorized in other videos that, you know, as we have been monitoring for the last 5 odd years now, the pole migrating, we're seeing it slowly migrate, not just only with the magnetic pole, but we're also seeing the weather shift along with it. So what I'm suggesting here is that this seems to rebut that argument that I theorized, because at some point, if we take information like this being a coal mine, coal deposits are there, which was prehistoric vegetation and trees at some point. So what I'm saying is climates move around on this globe, and when they do, you know, sometimes they favour a warmer environment where certain species of vegetation and trees can thrive, and you know, sometimes when the climate starts to drop, these particular types of trees that favour a more tropical region will be the ones that die off. So it's a clear indication for us to watch out for these particular trees in these more northern latitudes, like where we are in the UK, because over the years what we've been doing is importing trees into the UK, and some of these trees only thrive here in the most recent years, say the last 300 or 400 years, because of the climate is able to sustain the growth of those trees. But generally, some of these tropical trees shouldn't be even growing in this region, and certainly wouldn't grow in more northern latitudes. But they make no excuse. Let me give you this information straight off the bat. They make no excuse of what the Svalbard seed vault was created for. It is a doomsday vault, and although other countries have their own seed vaults, this one was specifically designed and purposely stocked for a global catastrophe. You know, I don't mince my words about that. It was specifically designed for a global catastrophe, and in the event that the continuity of the species of seeds that is stored in this should be destroyed, and in their own countries of various continents around the world, if they should lose their seeds, at least they would have the insurance of seeds being stored in Svalbard Seed Vault. So just a little bit more information. Svalbard Seed Vault is managed by the Norwegian government and Global Crop Diversity Trust and the Nordic Genetic Resource Centre. It's primarily funded by a well-known particular individual. Have a guess who that might be? Well, it's actually two people. It's Bill and Melinda Gates, and it's the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that primarily funds Svalbard Seed Belt. Think about that. And I know that some of you are going to immediately, like I was when I found out about this, think about the eugenics program that they also are involved in. Interesting, isn't it, guys? Do you ever get the feeling that somebody knows something and you don't? Because it's probably, as they think, not in your best interests to know. Let me tell you something about this Earth right now. I think it's obvious to a lot of people that the climate is shifting. We've seen the French foreign minister talking about climate chaos, in so many days, 500 days, climate chaos. Well, that time's come and gone. So, what is it that we're seeing? Well, we're seeing changes to the climate on every, diversity. We're seeing hurricanes in places that we don't usually see, cyclones, typhoons. We're seeing flash floods, droughts. People in the United States already know this, that some of the parts and some of the states in the United States are drying up, whilst others are seeing dramatic flash floods. Some of them in the northern regions of the United States will be seeing the climate shift. I get people, make regular comments saying we live in so-and-so and we live in so-and-so, pretty much all over the world, because this channel is viewed in virtually every single country in the world. Despite we only having 6,500 subscribers, we still get between 50 and 80,000 views per month. So, I get the feedback of all these people telling me that they're noticing these changes, they're noticing frosts. I was saying to people on this channel 5 years ago that the climate was shifting, and if you haven't noticed those strange rainbow balls, which are sundogs, or noctilucent clouds, and the cirrus clouds, which are more common in Arctic regions, then you're probably too busy engaged in the the functions of your everyday life, such as paying your bills, making sure your kids are fed and things like that. And a lot of people can't afford themselves the time to have a look and even notice some of the dramatic changes that have taken place already. I hear a lot of people talking about chemtrails, how the government are deliberately modifying the weather and all those things, but what you've got to realise is, on a global scale, is that the energy input to affect nature on this planet, such as the climate, would have to be enormous, and in almost the same scale as nature itself. It's an impossible task for human beings right now to dramatically modify their environment. They haven't got the technology, and I know some people will disagree with me, but they just don't simply have the technology at the moment to do so, despite them being able to seed clouds at the moment, which is, spray some chemicals into the atmosphere, which would perform as seed platforms for water vapor to condense on and therefore eventually precipitate. We know that they are doing this in some regions to force it to rain, but on a global scale, they do not stand a chance. They just simply do not have the means at their disposal, they don't have the technology at their disposal, and, they don't have the energy input which it would require to shift. What Mother Nature's doing on her own is just that, and it has the energy, it has the the necessary things to do it, and it does it quite natural. What we should be doing, in my view, on this planet is working with the Earth, not trying to work or force the Earth to work with us. And this is exactly what is happening. I dare say ancient, civilized, technologicalized civilizations that have existed on this planet before us. Some of us, in fact, the majority of us, are completely aware of their existence, and I'm sure that even these researchers, that are connected to governments that are aware of this, would say and ask that question: why are they no longer here? And why was there such a large gap before, we started to show some level of sophistication? The evidence is there, guys. You've only got to look. There are people, even on YouTube, that invest a lot of their time and their own wealth, like I do on this channel, researching those ancient artifacts that are left and have lasted the test of time simply because they are in stone, and they have demonstrated time and time again that these monuments and megalithic structures that was left were not chipped away with bronze, copper tools. These were saws that they had, and sophisticated cutting equipment that could make these large objects the shape they are and transport them vast distances. We're talking in some respects, let's just look at Stonehenge, hundreds of miles. Some of those blue stones, I think they're called the Saracen stones, don't hold me to that, but I think that's what they call them. They was moved from Wales to where they are situated right now, and yet we believe they dragged them from there. It's ridiculous. But getting back to Monsanto, I could talk forever on this company. I think it has been a little bit irresponsible, to say the least, in its activities. Yes, it's a very commercial company. It's very profit oriented, and I believe what they sell is not actually what they deliver. And I also believe that because of the individuals that work for Monsanto are usually people that have had careers in governments, I believe that they are probably black funded by governments themselves, and there could be several reasons why that would be. I mean, if you could cripple a country by devastating its crops, then there could be some financial or political advantage for doing that. I do know that a lot of people have actually lost businesses and farms because of this company and its business ethics. I remember speaking to someone about 8-9 years ago who was fighting a legal battle with Monsanto because Monsanto had said that the crops that he was growing, because he was a seed gatherer, he would grow crops and keep a load of the seeds back for the next year's growth, which is common in farming. But what Monsanto said is that they had a crop of GMO genetically modified seeds growing in fields alongside that, and it'd been cross-pollinated his crop, and the genes now were in his crop, so because they owned the patent on it, they actually owned his crop. And this is a story that has happened to many farmers, and what Monsanto said as a way of avoiding this cross-pollination would be to set buffer zones around the fields to separate them. But the problem is with buffer zones, as I was talking to this bloke about 8 years ago, is that buffer zones are not going to be effective, because pollen, as we know from studying core samples in Arctic and Antarctic regions, ends up there. They get into the jet streams, and we find all these exotic spawns of pollen in core samples, as well as other things that we check for core samples in the Arctic region. So these buffer zones that Monsanto suggest, a 20-meter buffer zone around a field is not just going to cut it, especially if there is a moderate breeze on the day that the pollen is being blown. It's going to end up in their crop. But Monsanto claim that they own the rights to it. If these seeds get cross-pollinated with a farmer that doesn't grow GMOs, then these seeds are going to be all these plants are going to be pollinated. And when he collects the seeds, the genetic mutations are going to be, even at some degrees, low, but they are going to be nevertheless in that new seed that is collected at the collection point in time, generally at the end of the crop. So not only have they destroyed, in my view, a lot of people's livelihoods because of their ethics, but they've also been the cause of many farmers in poorer countries killing themselves. I believe Monsanto and the corporations that have put the seed vault in Svalbard are on the same page together. I really do. And the reason why I believe that is because they're almost in the same business, aren't they? Seeds, one genetically modified seeds, one stores the originals just in case of a national or international catastrophe. In these poorer countries, I believe Monsanto set about to genetically modify seeds for changing climates. In some regions that would be seeds that would thrive in a more wetter climate, and in some regions it could be in droughted areas. And depending on whatever they bespoke made the seeds for the crop, if it was wheat, it could be anything, it doesn't really matter. But if it was, let's just say, wheat, what they would have done is suited it for the climate. But the climate is shifting so fast now that if they supplied the farmer with seeds that would stand better environment if it was drier, suddenly the climate changed into a wetter environment, and the seeds were lost because they was engineered to be in a drier, droughted region, and they would thrive more better. So farmers were mortgaging their money, their assets, on purchasing seeds that they believed would do better, and they failed. So the year after, they would buy seeds. If they brought the previous year seeds that were for a drier climate, they would buy the next year seeds for a wetter climate, and the climate would change again, and it would be another failure. And it has resulted in farmers selling off the land. It could have been being snatched up, it could have been purposely, like I said, through bad business ethics, purposely designed that way so that corporations could buy up large chunks of land mass in other countries. And basically the end result was farmers committing suicide because they was heavily in debt and no crops to pay for the debt, and therefore faulting on their loans and losing the property that had been in their families for many generations. It's a outright shame. But I also believe Monsanto's part in what could be the pole shift would be to do a delivery of seeds across the range, which would manage in any climate, whatever that end climate would be. They would have something to deliver at that point. If it came to the point where we was going to experience, as I have suggested, it could well be, because if we look at the sunspots over the last 3 solar cycles of 11 years, we've seen them dropping off, and there's no signs of that changing. We know from what scientists have been saying in regards to the CO2 causing global warming. Well, we're seeing, CO2 still rise, but global cooling happening. The temperature is no longer following the trend along with CO2. So people are scratching their heads now and saying, well, we've been telling people it's global warming and it's been caused by CO2. It's man-made global warming. But what's going on? What's going on is that we haven't been living alongside nature, and it's only going to get worse from this point on. I believe Monsanto was tasked to deliver whatever the environment could be, a seed that would thrive. But if only they'd have stuck with the originals, because here's the thing, guys. The original seeds had coped with, millions of years of, naturally evolving to changing climates. So it probably wouldn't fare as good as the genetically modified ones in a drier climate, because those seeds by Monsanto would have been delivered specially to thrive in a drier climate. But these seeds, the originals that had, lasted the test of time and, gradually evolved with changing climates, would fare better in any environmental, change, so long as it wasn't a dramatic change. What I'm talking about, so long as the environment didn't change to a tropical, to a sub-zero in a short period of time of months. So I do believe Monsanto were specifically building seeds for such events. And why would they do that? Why wouldn't they use the originals? Well, the fact is this: if the climate shifts in, say, the United States or Canada, these big seed bowl or food bowls of the earth, because of the amount of land there is in the United States and Canada and other places like that, if the climate did shift in these regions, well, let's just say this: you just simply cannot pick up the United States or Canada and move Canada or the United States to a place or an environment where the climate suits the crops. So they would have to stick it out and bear it out and hope that Monsanto had did its job well enough to cope with that environment at that point in time. So what I'm trying to say to you guys is that, for many, many years now, people have known about climate going to be shifting in the future. And it could be that the fact that, like myself and others, and there isn't many of us, we're a rare breed who study the magnetic North Pole, we're aware that since the 1900s, the early 1900s, the magnetic pole started to shift. And what would have inspired more people in this era of time, or within the last 40 years, would have been watching the magnetic pole accelerate as it took off in a vector towards Siberia, and stepped up 3 years, where it covered more distance in less time, indicating that we were definitely on course for a magnetic pole shift. Now, I'm going to round this video up here with just saying this, guys. This Earth is very much like a human body, in my view. This is the way I like to look at it. If we get hot, we sweat, and through latent heat we can cool down when the air hits that sweat. It removes the heat from the core of our bodies to the surface. This Earth does the exact same thing. And it is my view that is what's been going on, at least for the last 20 years. So we are going to see the climate shift, because what I believe is the core of the Earth is getting hot again. And I believe it goes through these cycles where it gets hot and cold and hot and cold. And just like our body does get hot and cold, it has its own mechanisms in which it cools itself down. These could quite possibly be ice ages. And how we end up with an ice age is, as I've discussed before, first of all, we have a core increase in temperature, which increases, the ambient air, by heat transfer. And that heat creates more evaporation. And because we have more water in the atmosphere, it starts to deposit it down in large flash floods. And not only that, it also shields some parts of the Earth from solar radiation, heating it up. So we end up then with an atmosphere that's got a lot more water vapour. Now, most of you know, if you shine a torch on a foggy day, the beam don't cut through the whole of the fog. It's blocked, and that's the exact same thing that's happening from the inbound solar radiation on our planet. It's being blocked by, a more densely packed atmosphere of water. So what happens after a while is it begins to put that much up in the atmosphere that it not only blocks out solar radiation, so the surface starts to cool down, but it also deposits larger amounts of snow. And that snow, depending on how much water vapour is still actively blocking these inbound solar radiation, could set off or trigger another ice age. Another thing that could trigger off another ice age is low solar output. We know that we went through the Maunder minimum and the Dalton minimum, and those both correlate with low sunspot outputs. So we know that that can shift the climate. The other thing that can shift the climate is a magnetic pole shift. Now, I have, in this research, correlated, moving climate, Arctic climate, with migrating magnetic poles. And it's by no coincidence, guys, any scientist on this planet that says that it is a coincidence that just where the magnetic north poles are just so happens to be Arctic regions. In the northern hemisphere, the Arctic, and in the southern hemisphere, the Antarctic. It is by no mistake that in these regions there is magnetic poles. And I further want to emphasize this, guys, because just because there are no historical records going back to the last magnetic pole reversal, that this can't happen. What I'm saying is it is possible, because like there is an Arctic region where in the same vicinity of a magnetic pole, there is also another element or another anomaly in that region, and that is the rotational axis. Think about it. We've seen the magnetic pole migrate, we've seen the climate migrate. The only thing that we haven't seen yet migrate is the rotational axis. So I would keep an eye on where the sun rises and sets. And I know some Inuit and Eskimos in the northern regions that still live there, and their ancestors have lived there for many, many years, have already started to suggest that they are starting to see the sun rise and set in different places, and that's going to be the only place, really. These people are going to be the first people to notice this, because they use it on a daily basis to navigate in those regions. Now, I don't think it was 2 years ago that we monitored it on the winter solstice, where the sun was rising and setting on the summer solstice, and I think we also looked on the spring and autumn equinoxes, and these are the times when you're going to notice it. And you can also check the altitude at noon when the sun's at its highest peak on these times. Now I'm not sure how slight of a degree and how accurate you're going to have to be. I mean, I would imagine that to start with, if we're thinking that we could be in a rotational axis period as a result of the magnetic pole migrating, then it could be very slight at the moment, just slight changes of where it rises and sets, and slight changes in the altitude at which it rises at its highest point in that particular point in the day. But I think that those are things that we should be monitoring, as well as the magnetic North Pole and the climate and governmental global activity with regards to companies such as Monsanto and organisations such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that primarily fund the Svalbard seed bank. Guys, the video has run on a little bit longer. I've tried to include a few more images so that you don't get bored with the same image as I talk. I really am trying to cut down the video's length in time, but there's a lot of information, a lot of different information that has been gathered by myself and other people over long periods of time. So that's the reason why sometimes these videos are the length they are. There's a lot of important information for those people that are prepared to listen. Again, I'm going to end the video here. I just want to say thank you to those people that support this channel, that support the website. What we're trying to do is make this more aware, because at the moment there's only a very small amount of people that are actually aware of this and could be doing more. I'm not going to go into the reasons why they need to do more. It should be apparent to most of you why we all need to do more. There are 7 billion souls on this planet. We're a small outfit. We need to be a bit bigger. We need to encourage more people to fund. And the reason why I don't charge subscription fees on the website, and it's completely funded by people that want to support the information getting out there, is because we all know that some people can't afford to, but that wouldn't stop those some people that couldn't afford to get the information doing something to help themselves and the family out, given than if they had the knowledge. So we bar nobody on this channel, and we don't charge people that simply can't afford to chip in. It really is an international effort, guys. We get people sometimes fund this channel all over the world, and that's all I'm going to say, other than the fact is that there is a link down there, guys. Your donations are really welcome, and you know what it's all in aid of. It's about getting more people aware of what's going on, aware of the climate change, and trying to convince people to give themselves or afford themselves more time to notice these things changing before it's too late. With that, guys, I'm going to say what I usually do. You enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll try and get another video out with some more valid information over the next coming week. Have a great time over the weekend, guys, and bye for now.